so this federal regulatory or deregulation would allow for people and doctors and states to make their own decisions as it relates to those policies. That is not the status quo. Even as we pass in our state legislatures medicinal marijuana statutes, the overarching federal scheme makes it such that no pharmacy will carry the extracts, and that parents oftentimes must break laws in order to care for their families. That is also injustice. And thirdly, and finally for my portion of this, I represent a district where, if you were just count 5 employers, Burlington, Broyhill, Bassett, Lane, and Dan River Mills, we've seen tens of thousands of jobs leave. We know to a metaphysical certainty that industrial hemp provides job opportunities in the agricultural field, and that the geographical and climatological realities of the district I represent make it one of the best places on the planet Earth to grow industrial hemp. But because it's the cousin of a vilified leaf, we do not allow these farmers to grow this product. That's ridiculous, and that is economic injustice. And those 3 reasons are why I'm here today. With that, I would hand the microphone over to Beth Collins and Lisa Smith, who will briefly tell you their personal stories as it relates to the state of medicinal cannabinoids in Virginia and the realities that they live in with the challenges their families face. Thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Beth Collins, and on behalf of Americans for Safe Access and the over 2 million medical cannabis patients, including my daughter, who suffers from intractable epilepsy, in the U.S., I would like to thank Congressman Garrett for introducing this important piece of legislation. We now have over 30 states. We now have 30 states with full medical cannabis programs, and another 16 with more restrictive programs. Each and every one of those state programs represent thousands, if not millions, of hours of patients and caregivers advocating in their state houses. These patients have the right to safe access of this treatment without the fear of federal interference. With our nation in an opioid overdose epidemic, with 91 people a day dying from opioid overdose, as a country we must examine every avenue possible to mitigate this crisis. Research has shown that opioid overdose deaths have decreased over 20% in states with medical cannabis programs. Ending the potential of federal interference in these states is crucial. Personally, as a mother who is faced every day with the decision to break federal law to treat my daughter's seizures with cannabis so she can have the quality of life she deserves and that Virginia has provided for her, I look forward to ending the state and federal conflict on this issue with the passage of this bill. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Smith, and this is my daughter, Haley, and I'd just like to give you our personal story. Haley has Dravet syndrome. Her first seizure happened when she was 5 months old. She was not diagnosed until she was 7 years old. I told this 100 times, so it always trips me up. It took 6.5 years to have her diagnosed. From then, we tried over 17 different pharmaceuticals, as well as 2 medical diets and an implanted medical device. And despite all those treatments, nothing worked for Haley. At the age of 14, she was told by her neurologist there was nothing left. So we had nothing left for her, and that's when we thought of medical cannabis. It would never have been my first option, and I never would have seen myself standing here and advocating for this. But her neurologist said that if he would not be prosecuted at the state and federal level, it would be what he would turn to. In 2015, the General Assembly in Virginia passed a law to allow us to possess the oil. So we can possess it. We basically have a get-out-of-jail-free card if we're arrested. And since then, Haley has had a reduction of about 45 to 50% of her seizures. She was having well over 1,000 seizures a year, and her life consisted of just being asleep, seizing while she was asleep, waking up to eat, and going back to sleep and seizing some more. Immediately after being on the cannabis oil, she was able to stay awake all day, and her biggest gain has been in her cognitive development. She is remembering who people are, she's speaking in full sentences, she's engaging in pretend play. She's 16, but she functions at a 3 to 5 year old level. I would have said 2 years old before. She has a brand new iPad today, and this I watched her for the first time enter her name without any prompting. She spelled it all by herself, and I was like, that never would have happened prior to this oil. So, like Beth, every month when we're getting low on our oil, we face the decision to order it again and break federal law. And we know that at any time someone could come in and arrest us, and we are small business owners. We would lose our daughter. I have twin boys, we lose them, we lose our business. But we will do whatever it takes to save her life. And right now the medical profession has failed with what they have, but they stand with us and they support this. She was recently hospitalized, and the attending physician said, we need to get ready. This is going to happen. And so we just hope that we can end this federal and state conflict, and we thank Congressman Garrett for supporting this and bringing this to life.
Thank you, Lisa and Beth. I'm going to hand the microphone over to my friend and colleague and real champion on this issue, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard of Hawaii.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa and Beth, for sharing your powerful story and testimony with all of us. It is your voices that are carrying the stories of so many who can't be here today, but who are living through directly the negative consequences and the suffering that our archaic laws are causing. Our outdated policies are having this ripple effect in so many different layers and sectors of our community, on families like yours, on our criminal justice system, on our economy. The statistic that is often stated is that every 42 seconds, someone is arrested for the use or possession of marijuana, turning everyday Americans into criminals, tearing families apart, tearing people's lives apart, wasting huge amounts of taxpayer dollars to arrest, prosecute, and incarcerate people, all for a drug that has been proven time and time again to be far less dangerous than alcohol, both for individual consumers and those around them. I had a chance a couple of months ago to go around and visit a number of different prisons in my district in Hawaii, and saw firsthand the impact on our criminal justice system, and also the lack of resources available to be able to help make sure we're actually reducing our recidivism rates. So the question before us is not whether you think marijuana use is good or bad, or how you feel about this issue. Really the question is whether we should be turning people into criminals for it. And when you look at the fiscal impact, you look at the social impact, the impact on our families, on people in this country, the answer is very clearly and unequivocally no. I want to mention the impact on our veterans. I think, Beth, you talked about the opioid addiction that is afflicting our country, and how in states that have legalized medical marijuana, we have seen opioid abuse deaths decreasing by over 20%. Up until recently, the VA prescribed opioids almost exclusively to veterans who are experiencing chronic pain, even providing those prescriptions for pain drugs after veterans tell their VA doctors, we don't want them. We don't want to be addicted to these drugs. Prescriptions for opiates spiked 270% over 12 years, according to a 2013 analysis in veterans. This led to addictions and fatal overdose amongst veterans at a rate twice the national average. The VA is beginning to start to change some of these practices, but even so, that change is not comprehensive, and it's not happening everywhere across the country. By passing this legislation, we will take a huge step forward in ensuring that the proper care is being delivered to those who need it the most. I'm proud to work with my colleague Tom Garrett on this, a fellow veteran and someone who, through his own experience, has come to this place in recognizing and standing up as a leader in making this federal change, taking away this conflict between federal and state law, and allowing states to make decisions for themselves. Thank you very much.
Be delighted to address any questions that you all have, and I do want to thank Lisa and Beth and Congresswoman Gabbard again for being here. Yes, sir.
Howard Woolger from LEAP, Law Enforcement Action Partnership. What is the most common response from a colleague of yours when they say we're against your bill? or the top 5 or whatever.
Well, look. I mean, there's a law and order angle. I want to be clear. You go back and look at my history as a prosecutor, right? We were full throttle. Having said that, there's I think a 7-fold disparity in arrests based on race on marijuana, where the usage patterns are nearly identical. Having said that, when you can engage the exact, so there's the law and order argument to start to answer your question. I think candidly, no one will say it, but I think there's a fear of repercussion. I've heard from people in my district, very conservative, very rural, why are you doing this? Well, it's manifest injustice, right? And when I was asked about it when I was running, I said this is what I think policy should be, and I'm not going to sit around being worried about getting reelected. I'm going to do what I think is right. Unfortunately, I think some of our colleagues are concerned that it might hurt them at the polls. What we need to do is tell them not acting might hurt them at the polls. And again, I don't stand here today advocating decriminalization. I advocate letting my state make that decision for itself. And there's a huge gulf. 50 laboratories for democracy, right? Wherein we learn what works and doesn't work, then other states presumably will implement those policies. But a 1/5 decrease in opioid prescriptions, a 20% decrease in opioid overdoses, I mean, the upsides are immense. And to deny a medicinal use when you've heard the testimony of these two ladies, I can't even speak to it. I did not start where I am today, in my opinion. But listen and look around, I would say to my colleagues, and you'll see what I see, and this is the right thing to do. Sorry for not answering more directly.
That was good.
I think it's fear.
Are they going to be voting on this bill on the 23rd? I heard through the grapevine. Is that true?
I wish. So what we're doing is we're sort of looking at the committee of jurisdiction, which is the Judiciary Committee, looking at the subcommittee that it would go before, and we're trying to do a nose count so that if we think we hit critical mass in the sub, we can push for a vote in the sub, and then do the same exact thing, and that is hit critical mass in the full. If we get this bill out, I really think if we get this bill before it passes, and I think it passes with a bipartisan, refreshingly, majority. So it's right now it's strategic as to when we try to push it, and we want to know we believe we have the votes before we do it.
Yeah, Senator Sanders had a similar type of bill. Have you heard from him about the prospect of this kind of bill working, and is he supporting it?
Senator Sanders had an identical bill. I know that because my legislative staff poached the bill. I think success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. I presume, based on his intellectual consistency, while we disagree on a lot, I find him to be someone of integrity, that he would be supportive. We've also received support from some unexpected, perhaps, sectors in the other chamber. Well, I won't speak for them and let them speak for themselves, but what we see here really is sort of a personal liberty coalition that defies party identification, which I think is nice for a change. So,
well, it seems like your timing is a lot better than his was now that there are 30 states that legalize medical marijuana.
There's a threshold that there's a Rubicon once we cross that the federal government will act, but it is to know that something is wrong and not to do something about it should disqualify you for leadership. It really should. I won't name names, right? I try to get along with everybody. Now, if you reach a different intellectual conclusion, then I respect you, right? You might just think you're wrong. But I think the numbers bear this out, at least as it relates to dereg and allowing states to make decisions for themselves, at least as it relates to medicinal reform. And I think I have a pretty strong argument that if somebody can go to federal prison in one state and not be investigated in another, there's a manifest injustice. I don't know how you argue otherwise. So if we're going to get there, will it be on our watch? Will it be on this bill? That's why she and I are here. We hope so. But you know what? Those of you who aren't with the press who are here today, that's how we win. That's how we win. We unify people on good policy and go forward.
Is this the kind of issue, Congressman, that you got into politics for?
This is the kind of issue that I got into politics for. You can like a bill, you can lobby for a bill, you can't hug a bill. And the most gratifying stuff I've ever done, whether at the state level or here, involves people. And there's a face that we've painted on cannabis reform. And I mean, there's all sorts of different angles, but it's a lot of different angles that involve a lot of different faces that aren't some stereotypical meme. And doing the right thing is why I do this. Yes, sir.
Have you talked to Chairman Goodlatte about this? He's your neighbor, isn't he?
We have felt the pulse of the committee chair, and I have a great deal of respect for Chairman Goodlatte, and I think if we can get the numbers where we need them, that we'll get a fair hearing.
I would suspect that your district ideologically is a lot like his district. How is it you can be so good on this and he not so good?
Well, some people probably think he's better on it than I am, right? There's the other side of the issue. I keep saying it, and I think people think it's so much political speak, and I tell you that I've heard it about my colleague who stands with me today. I'm not here to stick my finger up in the wind and figure out what I ought to do to get reelected in 2 years. I don't existentially need a title. And believe it or not, this isn't easy, and sometimes it isn't fun, but it's important. And again, I stay awake at night contemplating injustice. And we live in a world filled with humans, so there will always be injustice. I speak to young people all the time about inherent rights as an American. You're inherently entitled to an opportunity, which unfortunately won't be equal, because if your last name's Obama or Clinton or Bush or Trump and you want to go to Harvard, it's easier, right? But you're entitled to an opportunity, and you're entitled to define success within the Jeffersonian construct of liberty. That is, my freedom ends where yours begins, for yourself. But we don't let people do that in this realm. And then we create injustice where it need not exist by leaving on the books a law that we've abdicated the willingness to enforce. Well, I respect the Attorney General immensely for saying, if you don't like the marijuana laws, change the marijuana laws. I respect his background. Again, I was a prosecutor. I was a pretty good one. But somebody shouldn't be going to jail in one state under federal law. Remember, it's federal law, not state law, and being ignored in another. I can't, it's ridiculous. So yeah, this is a fight I'm willing to have, and if it costs me politically, then I'll go out knowing that I was true to myself and true to Lisa, and it's a pretty good gig there.
Tom, I have a question. Jason Amatucci.
Oh my gosh, Jason, I was supposed to, and I'm going to hand the mic over to Jason. Jason's going to speak a little bit on industrial hemp, and I apologize.
Okay.
Come on up. Sorry, Jason.
No worries. Jason Amatucci. I'm
Proving yet again I'm not perfect.
That's all good. Thank you, Tom, so much for preparing this legislation. Because I want to point out, I'm the executive director of the Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition, and this has a lot to do with our industry as well. We passed a law in 2015, and it was also 1227. That's the same as HR 1227 here. And that legalized industrial hemp and for research in Virginia. Last year, we legalized it on commercial, ready for commercial, but it has to wait on the federal government. So this bill, once signed, would enact our industry, would jumpstart our industry. There are people that are waiting on the sidelines. They've got money, they've got everything. They've got the people lined up, and we are ready for business in Virginia. And it is a billion-dollar industry worldwide. We are the biggest consumers of industrial hemp products in America, and we are the only industrialized nation in the entire world that does not have a legal hemp industry. That is insanity, the definition of insanity. And I just want to point out that this is a big part of this bill, and let's not forget, this is a wonderful, you guys are amazing, and your courage. You've done so much in the General Assembly to push this issue for Virginia, and it's so important, and along that lines, we're right with you on that. Because industrial hemp, you can have CBD oil from industrial hemp, and that is another thing that we need to look into as well as Virginia. And so we're all in this together. It's a true coalition. And like I said, I thank everyone here on this. I think we can really get this going. Bob Goodlatte knows about industrial hemp. He's supportive of it. So these are the ways we need to work with him and let him see the light on this. And I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jason. I apologize.
No worries.
Anybody have any further questions? Yes, sir.
I heard she was commenting earlier about Weed for Warriors and what have you, and on November 11th, in 2015, I was with the Weed for Warriors on Veterans Day, and we dumped like 1,000 pill bottles on the White House sidewalk. And there's a bill now also, 1820, called Veterans for Equal Access. And that bill, along with this bill, along with the HR 975 respect state marijuana laws, I almost think they should be a package presented together almost, or at least put out there, you know, because they kind of all help with the same deal.
So there are multiple pieces of legislation. I know Congressman Polis has one, Congressman Rohrabacher has one. I think there may be a couple others. I'm not opposed to any of them. What we've done here is brevity's the soul of wit, and we've sort of, with the exception of trafficking from one state where it's permitted to one where it's prohibited, we've removed the federal regulatory oversight. Ours is, to my way of thinking, the long ball. We'll just do this real simply, let the states do it as they will. But yeah, there are other good pieces of legislation. I like simple.
And we could ask all the legalization groups such as LEAP, MPP, NORML, SSDP, if they could blast their members. That would help. Tell them to light up Congress phones and the computers with these bills to support it.
Yeah, I hope so. And I'll ask this.
That's what we
Those
need.
of you who are moving sentiment, who are getting people to call their member in this climate in which we find ourselves today, if you would encourage them to do so in a polite and respectful manner, I would appreciate that. It's that decorum, that courtesy that we built this nation on is all too rare. So yeah, motivate and move people, but have them do so politely. I think we catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Yes, it's a way to beat a bear.
Tom, are there any senators that are maybe?
Well, yeah, there are, but I won't let them name themselves. But I will tell you, and I spoke to this earlier, you have some very historically, I guess, ideologically conservative members who are wholly on board, and you've got some folks who are very ideologically liberal who are wholly on board. And I think, ironically, we have an issue where if we can get the middle, that's where it's at. So, my way of thinking, letting people make decisions closer to home is the essence of Jeffersonianism. This is the right thing to do.
Monticello's in your district, is that correct?
So let me brag on the 5th District, totally unrelated. Jefferson lived there. Madison was the first congressman. He defeated Monroe. Justice Marshall retired there. Patrick Henry retired there. The Civil War ended there, and the Civil Rights Movement in Virginia began there. So, no pressure. Anyone? Denzel's giving me the rapid upside. Thank you guys immensely. Thank you for coming out. Let's get this done.